Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio. Thank y'all to everybody who's been listening to us here tonight. We appreciate those folks listening to us, of course, on TuneIn and hitting the Legacy Internet Radio website, as well as to those folks that are listening to the replays on YouTube. Definitely have a very exciting and interesting conversation that I'm looking forward to having here. We've talked about many issues here on Legacy Internet Radio, Ain't No Half Step on Marcus J. And one of those issues is domestic violence and how it can affect families. And we've got a person on the live line with us now that we're going to have a conversation with, and she's looking to share her story with us. And so at this time, I'd like to welcome and introduce Josee's mom. Josee's mom is joining Ain't No Half Stepping with Marcus J. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for
all right. No, absolutely no problem. For the purposes of conversation, I'm going to refer to you as mom going through, just so that we can kind of set that parameter in the beginning. I'll refer to you as mom and Josee's mom. And, you know, we talked a little while ago in our pre-interview, and, you know, there's a lot going on here. What I want to do is just kind of let the listeners know who Josee's mom is and why this story is so important. Tell me, start at the beginning. Who is Josee and who is her mom?
Well, hi, my name is DC Livers, and I'm Josee's mom. So I think the story is important because, you know, Josee is basically the face of the newest civil rights movement that we have going on right now. I mean, the new civil rights movement is literally about our kids. There's a lot of people who are profiting from snatching kids from harming children. I mean, the pipeline to prison, the, you know, preschool to prison, cradle to prison, all those, you know, buzzwords, terminology, you know, that people love to use when they're seeking grant money. You know, they're real, and there are children whose lives are literally hanging in the balance, and unfortunately, my child's life is one of those children. So, you know, her story is important. It's set a lot of precedents, and you know, it's interesting whenever we do have a hearing. Sometimes it feels like a TV show because there's so many people in the courtroom. There are interns. You know, it's just fascinating to a bunch of people for whatever reason. It's obviously not fascinating to me, but, you know, I notice more and more and more people come into the hearing. So there's something there. I mean, for those attorneys who've taken a chance or have the opportunity to look at my case, not one attorney, and there's even a judge involved in Missouri, has looked at this case and said anything other than, this is ridiculous, it's outrageous, it is a miscarriage of justice on a massive level. But, you know, in the defense of New York City's CPS, which is called the Administration for Children's Services, you know, I think that what happened is some corrupt employees took it too far, and then the agency got to a situation where they're trying to do risk management and try to figure out how to come out of this without a massive lawsuit.
Right.
You know, and so while they are used to sweeping things under the rug and covering it up, in this particular case, unfortunately for them, it's going to come back because what they've done and how they've done it is so egregious. It's so unbelievable. The taxpayers are footing the bill for this. That there really is no going back. And, you know, I guess in some ways, I guess in history, in order for anything to change, somebody has to, you know, take one for the team, so to speak.
Right.
Unfortunately, I guess it's me and Josee.
Right.
You know, but I definitely want to defer that pain from her onto me because she doesn't deserve it.
Right.
She just doesn't.
Well, let's go to the beginning and kind of talk about the story and how we ended up getting to this point. I know we had talked before about some domestic violence, and we know domestic violence is at the beginning of this story. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, domestic violence is at the beginning, the middle, the end. I mean, it's just a domestic violence story. There's no way around it. Every single aspect, every single angle. You know, Josee saved my life. If that last time that, you know, he did the drop kick and flying across the room, I remember crawling on my stomach and getting to another room and locking the door and calling 911. And I remember when the EMTs came, the firefighters from New York City, when they came to the house, they asked me what happened. I said I fell. I didn't say how. They put me into the ambulance, and I just literally never forget that moment, because it was like the door closed to the ambulance, and they were like, "Okay, you're out of there. We know what's going on. We don't want to say anything in this circumstances, but we know what's going on." It was literally like an intervention or something, but it was so aggressive that I wasn't really prepared for it, and I didn't know what to do. I remember thinking, obviously, it's my fiance, my child's father. I was thinking about things that I left in the house. They were really just trying to, what I now call the Underground Railroad of domestic violence. I was literally about to go down the rabbit hole. I was never going to come back if they had it up to them. But I just couldn't. I couldn't leave at that moment. But I remember praying, and I said, if my child's okay, baby's okay. If I haven't lost a child, I will leave. And so I went back, because I had a laptop, and when you leave, you need to leave correctly. You need to leave with your ID and your Social Security card. You need to leave so that you can live, but you have to know where you're going, because the story, the real deal, is domestic violence fraud. They present it as if there's tons of help. Just call this 800 number, and you're going to be fine. Wear this purple bracelet. Everything is going to be okay. But it's a lie. When you call those hotlines, especially where I was in New York, and when you call those hotlines, they're almost always full.
Right.
They're also interviewing you. You have to give your name, your Social Security number, your date of birth. You have to tell your story over and over and over to each shelter that you try to call to get help from, and then they have the chance to say, "We'll take you," or not. What they don't tell you is the number of people they turn away. I could tell you probably 80% of the time that I called the number, I was always turned away. I always had to figure out what to do.
Because of the crowding, because there's so many.
Yeah, the crowding. There's not a lot of beds. These things they're not well run. I mean, what they'll have is what I call two faces, right? They'll have the corporate face. I'm on their press list myself, so I get all their beautiful email newsletters. They have some, nice mother that they help. They show pictures of her apartment. She's smiling. The children are smiling, and life is fine. That's what I call the donor side, right? Give us some money so we can help these people. And then there's the real side. When you get to the domestic violence shelter, it's run by people that you wouldn't want to even know in many cases. I mean, not always, but in my experience, I couldn't believe the type of people that ran, the shelters. And it was pretty terrifying, because they said, "Okay, go to this address."
When you say the type of people, are we talking about criminally shady people or morally shady people?
Yeah, because I got shook down a lot. When I got to one place, the lady flat out told me, how much she was going to charge for me to get an apartment. Because obviously, as soon as you get there, your first goal is to try to get some kind of normalness. You only have 45 days, maybe 90 if you're lucky, before they put you out. And when they put you out, you have to go into like a regular family shelter with people who might not have background checks. Just all kinds of situations. So clearly you want to avoid that happening.
Right.
Because no one's going to leave domestic violence just to go be homeless. You know what I'm saying? That's why I call it fraud, because the pieces that are missing are intentionally missing to keep the circle going. Because you can't get money, and you can't get grants if you're the organization unless you have people coming through, right?
Right.
And then once you get there, it's unfortunate, because they spend so much time having you in these domestic violence classes and workshops and this and that. And it's like you have to beg for your freedom. You're spending all this time on things they've gotten grants for, where they need physical bodies to show up, but you don't have time to work on your life. I had a special needs child. JOSEE was born preemie as a result of domestic violence. Most people, when they have a baby, they're like, you bring that outfit to the hospital that you want the kid to wear home. Well, in my case, my kid did not come home for weeks, and I stayed with her at the hospital. But she was sick. But even when she did finally have the clearance to go home, I remember the nurse and I struggling for an hour with her car seat, trying to figure out how to fit her in the car seat. She was so small,
Right.
so that she wouldn't fall out of it. But she had to physically be taken out of the hospital in it. But it literally wasn't safe because she was so tiny. In fact, at one point, someone actually called CPS and said, "Oh, we think this mother has her child must have died because she's walking around with a doll, pretending it's a baby." Josie was very, very small.
Right.
She weighed 4 pounds, and she actually lost a few pounds before she came home. So she was, really tiny. I remember burping her with my index finger.
Wow.
It was smaller than a magazine.
Okay.
She was so small,
Right.
but she was a lot. So ultimately, when you look at the scope of it, when you say domestic violence and CPS and those kinds of things, family court, it's a trifecta for them. It's an easy score because then you can say, oh, well, they've been to domestic violence, so there must be some mental concern. And then, Big Pharma is very much involved in CPS. Dr. Phil last summer testified before Congress about the over-medicating of children in foster care and the over-diagnosis. A child could be crying because they missed their mother. Instead, they'll say, the child is depressed. Let's give them some medication.
Yeah.
In New York City, they're leading the nation in over-medicating children. New York City, this case matters because New York is a model state. It then trains other cities on how to do it, right? And so what happens is New York is leading the nation on the longest amount of time that kids stay in foster care, 54 months, which is 4.5 years.
Right.
During that time, these kids come with tens of thousands of dollars attached to their head every week. New York City has a $3 billion budget, which is over $300-something thousand per child. But on May 28th of 2014, the commissioner testified they only spend $29,000 per child. If we bump it up to $30,000, that's still $270,000 going somewhere.
Right.
But it's
Per
not
child.
going to the child.
Per child, yeah.
So in our case, we were failed by the city of New York because, like I said, we had the orders of protection. We were supposed to be on the top of the list for Section 8 to, get out. I applied for Section 8 several times, and I never heard back from them. I was supposed to be a priority case. In the meantime, I was applying for housing lotteries in New York City. There's so many people who want an apartment, and so instead of most places, you just go by the apartment building and apply, and they say yes, and you move in. In New York, a lot of people want the same apartment, so they have to pull your name out of a hat. 6 times, my name was pulled out of the hat. And I had the right vouchers and supposed to be support that's supposed to come from the city to move us along. Now I'm talking about apartments that were built from the ground up at 42nd Street, across the street from the Javits Center, like apartments that I could leave my child in a will. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been amazing. But maybe that's what it was. Maybe they didn't want us to have amazing. Maybe we were just supposed to have mediocre. I noticed that they funnel a lot of the people from the domestic violence shelters to Bronx, to certain parts of Brooklyn. It's almost like it's an entry system into poverty. When you enter the domestic violence shelter, they demand that you open up a public assistance case, whether you have ever had one before or not. That's just how they get paid.
Right.
But when they do that, it creates a tsunami for domestic violence victims because as soon as you apply for public assistance, they then go after the father and they notify him. So now he may have your address. Now you got to go to court with him for child support, and you got to face your abuser.
The same
These are
person
things
that just caused the situation. Yeah.
Professionals across the board have said are very unsafe, but yet the same organizations that are supposed to protect us are putting us in harm's way. They also call CPS on a very frequent basis, and they will turn moms in. New York, this case also matters because New York is one of those states, one of those cities. I don't want to talk about the state of New York. It's just New York City because the state runs it differently. New York City runs their own little situation. But in New York City, they are doing an unbelievable job of removing children from their mothers based on domestic violence, and they're calling it failure to protect. They say the moms failed to protect their children from domestic violence because they got beat up in front of the kids.
Wow. Okay.
It's unbelievable.
We'll talk about blaming the victim.
It's the types of things. that we can't imagine as regular, rational, normal human beings. We can't even believe that this kind of thing goes on. I know as a journalist I couldn't, so then I was like, well, why hasn't anybody written about this? Then I found out people did. You know, I started interviewing attorneys, and you can find all this information at falselyaaccusedmoms.com. There are other writers that write on there now too. But
say that one more time. Where can they find it? One more time.
Falsely Accused Moms. FALSELY accused ACCUSED moms MOMS.com. Falselyaaccusedmoms.com. There's a little blog that I started when it first started happening because I was covering all this information that I just couldn't believe. You know, the allegation on my case was the house was supposed to be messy. I mean, I took pictures. I did audio tape of the initial visit. The woman came out with a supervisor, and if the house was messy, then I don't understand why she would leave the child in the house for weeks and weeks and weeks. The house was not messy. But what ACS does is when you fight back, they will literally bankrupt you. They use you as an example. Oh, you want to fight back? Oh, you want to file a complaint? Because, like I said, my case was pretty much done. I had filed a complaint with the state of New York. 48 hours later, they snatched my kid. You know, my whole case has been very retaliatory. As we speak right now, there's an order in New York City Court that says that if I speak to my attorney more than once a week, that I'll be incarcerated. I'll be considered in contempt of court and incarcerated.
How do you?
And if I file my own motion.
Okay, let me get some clarity. Let me get some clarity on that. I'm obviously not an attorney, but it doesn't seem fair that the court can regulate how often you can communicate with your attorney. How are they getting away with that?
The court cannot regulate that. It's denial of my due process rights. You know, all family courts in the United States are run like a romper room court. What happens is hearsay is allowed. That means you can say, hey, I was just in an elevator and I heard this lady say she recognized you and that you were on the roof about to jump. Okay, well, I came in with the police, you know, because I'm a domestic violence victim, and they escort me into the building and they walked with me to the courtroom to make sure I'm safe. So how did you get me on the building? You know what I mean? But they can say that, and whatever they say is truthful. It's the only place in the United States where you can be accused of a crime. Because let's call it what it is. If you're saying someone committed child neglect or child abuse, that's a crime, and that should be, the police should be involved, and there should be fingerprinting, and there should be an investigation, right? But in family court, there's none of that. You're guilty to proven innocent. You don't get Miranda. You don't get any of that stuff. And because you're thinking, oh my God, I want my child back, you're being bullied out of your rights. You know, you're just being flat out bullied. I mean, the biggest mistake you could make, I made. I opened the door. I let them in my house. All I really had to do was go down to their office and talk to them. But I didn't know that, and I just assumed, you know, hey, I have nothing to hide. You know, I have nothing to hide. But that's when I basically waived all my rights, you know, when she let them in the house. They're not allowed to go to your refrigerator, but they do. They're not allowed to do a bunch of the things that they do, but they do. And you allow them to do it because you just assume this is what you're supposed to do. You know, from the very beginning, they violate your rights. They should walk into your house with a sheet of paper that says, this is what you're alleged to have done. Here are some places you can go to get help. I would like to remind you that what you say to me can be used in court. You know, there should be the application of justice that is expected all throughout the United States, but there isn't. There's no expectation of justice. In fact, according to the Child Welfare Organizing Project, which is called CWOP in Manhattan, they're pretty reputable for what they do. 98% of the cases, period, are cited for in the favor of ACS. It could be that $3 billion. Who knows what it is? But what happens is, you know, 60% of the calls that come through CPS hotline, according to the commissioner, her May 28, 2014 statement, her testimony before the city council for the budget, according to her, you know, 60% of the calls that come through the hotline are unfounded. They're not real.
Let me jump in here because I
they're
want to. Let me jump in because I want to ask you a couple of questions about some of the things that we're hearing. Ain't have Steppin with Marcus J live from the Den, Legacy Internet Radio. Thank you for listening. We're talking to DC Livers, JOSEE's mom, about her story, a case of domestic violence and how it affected her family. I guess the first question, I'm a little bit confused about how they are able to tell you about the attorney. I know it kind of stops you, but I want to kind of go back to that because that, I think, kind of speaks to the entire situation of the unfairness of how you and JOSEE have been treated. How is it that they're able to get away with it? I mean, I know you said that they're just doing it, and I got you on that, but how are they getting away with telling you, talk to your attorney once a week, if not, you talk to him more, you go to jail? How are they getting away with that?
This hearing, these orders came down on April 2nd of 2015, and it's hugely important because at that point I had never missed a hearing, ever. But they made it impossible for me to get to the hearing. According to the order and according to the Family Court Act, which governs everything that can happen in the family court, they must provide you with transportation. Well, JOSEE's placed 1,000 miles away from New York, and so to be near her, I took an apartment about 5 blocks away, and I work in Manhattan, so I'm commuting 1,000 miles. But I had to do that to be near my child. So the law is probably written for those parents who live in Manhattan to get a Metro card. But the law says that they must provide me with transportation to and from court-ordered appointments and hearings. And in my case, that's 1,000 miles away. So I've pretty much spent about $10,000 running back and forth, and the court has ordered them to retroactively reimburse me, but I haven't seen a penny. So they decided, hey, we have a way that we can win this case if we don't let her come to court. So they literally did not provide me with the ticket, April 2nd hearing. At that hearing, they just basically committed fraud and perjured themselves, and they committed crimes. I mean, this is not me saying this. There are a lot of people now looking at this case. The case is now under federal investigation. The case is under investigation by the state of New York. The United States Department of Education is investigating. There are a lot of people. There are at least 5 different organizations looking into this case now. And every single one of them will be asking the same question that you and I are asking, which is how were they able to get away with this? And because I've been a large advocate for child welfare in the past, and I still believe that CPS does need to exist, there are some children who are at risk and who really need the services that are supposed to be administered. So I don't want this to come across as if we need to completely get rid of CPS. It has to be reformed. It is way beyond illegal. It's one of the worst things that can happen to the United States. It's got to get reformed.
No, I
but in saying that, I believe that those people, those 5 players, are the same 5 people. The Edward Gould is the foster care agency. ACS is the agency that funds them, gives them the money. I believe that what happened was these same 5 people kept it amongst themselves, and because there's so little oversight, and because the supervisors don't do anything, and everybody's making so much money, I don't think anybody looked into the case. And
right.
So I've met some people at ACS, like, Mr. Celeste. He works in the housing unit. Very knowledgeable guy. Unfortunately, I twisted his words, but there are some people there who really do care about these kids. So I don't, I feel like there needs to be internal people calling in and making fraud complaints because they're hurting the entire system. They've gotten away with it because before now it was just me and my child's godfather in those courtrooms while they did whatever, and no one was bothering to look at the case.
Right.
So when the mayor of New York City, de Blasio, on January 24th, 2014, was reacting to the unbelievable murder of Miles Dobson when ACS again messed it up and got another kid killed, there was international cry. So he decided to reform and to redo the family support unit, which is the unit that's supposed to support me, right? he called for 3,200 ACS cases to be reviewed, and that, of course, was our case.
Right.
But our case has never been reviewed, not once.
So
My daughter has never met her attorney.
So the mayor calls it, and it never got done. Listen, in the 5 minutes that we have left, tell us, the listeners, how we can help. What can we do, if anything? How can we help you, support you? What do you need from us?
First and foremost, Josee is being abused in foster care. It's a very hard thing to say, but it's happening. And so, we need to get her to safety. We need to get her the services that she needs. We need to get her the services that she needs. And as I speak out about it, they've taken my visits away from me. I don't even know where her doctor's appointments are. She's not getting to see her specialist. She's not getting the help she needs. We're supposed to be in family therapy. They're not even allowing that. I've been paying out of pocket for all of this stuff. I don't live in the state where my child is, so I didn't have insurance in that state. So I had to pay out of pocket for the services we were getting. They made me go 35 miles to see the therapist for me and my daughter, which my daughter didn't even show up for the 30 sessions, not once. Every time I had to spend $80 each way just to get to the services that they're supposed to pay for. So how can you help me? You can call Edwin Gould and speak to Chanel Garcia. She's the case planner. She never calls me. I never hear from her. She's supposed to oversee this case, supposed to help me. She is turning in timesheets, as if she's working on our case. And she's not. Her number is 917-716-0268. You can call her and tell her that you're concerned about Josee.
Chanel what now?
Chanel Garcia.
Okay.
And that you expect her to do a better job. You can call Mayor de Blasio at 212-788-2958. 788-2958, area code 212. That's Mayor de Blasio's press line. You can ask to speak to him or to speak to the First Lady of New York City, who's supposed to be a champion of domestic violence. You can call Letitia James, the New York City public advocate. She's supposed to be suing and fighting for me and Josee and people like us. You could fax a letter over to the White House Office of Public Engagement at 202-456-2992. Most importantly, you can donate to the fund. There's not much money in there right now. Some people are giving in other ways, and all help is definitely appreciated. But that's GoFundMe.com/Josee's Mom, and it's JOSEEMOM. I love it when people hold signs that say "Bring Josee home." It's just so encouraging, to her and to me. She started a blog, and she's one of those little kids that grew up with mommy on red carpets and covering events. So she's really good with the camera, and she's held a mic for me once when I was interviewing Jennifer Hudson. She's one of those little kids that I'd want to know, even if she wasn't related to me. She's a really sweet child. She's also a big prankster, which I think she gets that part from her dad. And I just want to real quick talk about her dad.
Absolutely.
And say, it's been very important for me that I don't say anything bad about her father. It's, I'm hoping one day he'll reform himself, and we obviously, that part of our lives is over, but, for her sake, I hope that he finds a way to get back to being a person, because, it's unfortunate for her that she's had to go through so much, and, she right now, neither one of her parents were able to be at her graduation when she graduated from kindergarten last week.
Right.
As a result
Wow.
of this mess. So, I want to talk a little bit about the school, how racist the school has been, and how they've not let me participate in my child's education, and how they, when they got mad because I had 4 court orders that they didn't want to honor, they issued a criminal trespass order. I mean, it's as if no one who's supposed to help this child will help the child because they want to.
Well, here's my question, because I'm hearing that, but here's my question, and here's what the listeners are going to ask, why? Why? Like, what is the reason that this every single place that is supposed to step in and help you and Josee, and they all seem to turn their head and not help? I mean, why is this thing happening? Because that's I guess that's my question.
According to the court order that I got yesterday, it's mostly happening because of falselyaaccusedmoms.com. They don't like the blog. The blog is the only Innocence Project for Family Court in the United States. It's the only place that, as a birth parent,
right,
that you can go and find information to fight for yourself.
So basically, because you embarrassed them, and they're fighting you back.
I guess I don't know, but they literally submitted an order to show cause in court and got it signed by the judge in the case on June 2nd. That all it talked about was this blog. And again, this is a violation of our rights, because the only reason she should be removed is if she's somehow in danger. You know, there's a couple advocates involved that I need to thank. I really need to thank, you know, Jonesa Stock. She is a CASA advocate. She's not directly involved with our case because she can't be. She's out of jurisdiction. But she's in another state, and she heard about our case through someone in Los Angeles, and she's been so instrumental in the change that we're seeing right now. She called the White House for us, and she filed a child welfare complaint against ACS because of the treatment of my child, and she's, you know, just staying involved and making sure that other people know what's happening. And as a result of her, just that one person, our whole case is now turning. It's starting to finally turn, because I think in general most people believe that if CPS involved, that you somehow had to have done something. I'm sure there's at least half of your audience that's just wondering, something doesn't add up. She had to have do something. There has to be. You know, there are literally times when I'm sitting in court and I'm thinking, after listening to them, if I didn't know it was me, I would think the person was guilty. There have been days where I've been getting awards for something because of my work helping these moms. You know, we have a hotline, and we've helped 15 children get free. We've helped 7 kids not even be taken at all. You know what I'm saying? I'm jealous of my own clients.
Right.
Because the falsely accused moms, when they get falsely accused moms behind them, we go to court with them. We have a parent advocate assigned to their case. We make phone calls. We write letters. We get attorneys involved. I mean, it's aggressive, and unfortunately, it can't help Josee and I, because our case is out of jurisdiction of New York City. It's gone so far, and it's kind of complicated now. We're trapped in the middle between 2 states, but it's starting to help us finally, because we were able to reach a parent advocate. So if you're out there listening, ask yourself a question. If you're going to call CPS and you're going to make a complaint, what you really should be asking yourself is, do I think this situation is so tragic that this child should go to kiddie jail? Because the person that's going to be punished is not going to be the parent. It's going to be the child. Children skip from the foster home to foster home, and they're almost always going to be abused when they're in foster care. Maybe what you should ask yourself is, can I buy them groceries? Can I drive them to go, you know, get cleaning supplies? Can I, you know, help the mother get a GED? Maybe, because really 90% of the cases in New York City are poverty-related things that can be solved in 90 days with social services. In our case, there wasn't anything. I've done everything. I've taken parenting classes. I've got my daughter and myself into therapy sessions so we can, you know, heal from all the separation. And I've got an apartment. I went and got the apartment and moved to another state. I have a job. You know, I'm a great mother. So there should be no reason why they're doing anything other than help us. I have a court order that says I'm supposed to have liberal, unsupervised visits, pick my child up from school 5 days a week, and have overnights. And now they have created all these interim orders, which is a nice, polite way of saying, we know this other order's in place, but in the interim we're going to change it, because they can't legally change it. They recently decided to change the goal, and they did this illegally, from return her to me to forcing an adoption. They're trying to adopt my child. They're trying to steal my child. But one of the places that they're forgetting about is dad rights. Not that I want the father back in my life, but there are dads listening right now. Imagine if you went out with the child's mother and they can just take your child without notifying you. It's federally illegal. You can't do it. Yet they're trying to do it. They're supposed to give him and me 60 days notice if they were going to try to adopt our child. And why would you try to adopt a child when both parents are alive? And I'm fighting like the Dickens trying to get my child back. I'm literally jumping through every hoop.
Right.
But they're doing it to punish me for fighting back and for, telling my story. And I'm sure after this interview there'll be more retaliation. But that's just the price we have to pay at this point, that I have to pay, rather, because this can't continue. I mean, I write every day about children who die in foster care, and I don't want that to happen to my child. Yet they're putting her in such situations that, you just never know what can happen. You never know what can happen. So I had to speak out because, I'm hoping that people hear this story and don't believe me. Do your own research. Call these numbers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Find out for yourself, because it's your taxpayer money. You know where the funding comes from? It comes from the Social Security Administration. Out of your check, when you see FICA,
Right.
some of that goes to pay for CPS. They're stealing your money, and then they're telling you that they're protecting children in the process.
Wow. Ain't no half
And they're
stepping.
not.
Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio. We're talking to DC Live's Josee's mom in reference to her story, how domestic violence has affected her life and her daughter's life and their family. Final words, because we got to go ahead and take a break here. So, last thing you want to have the listeners hear: websites, phone numbers you gave us. Anything else you want to add before we close?
GoFundMe.com/Josie's Voice. You can follow me on Twitter at falseaccusedmoms.com. But the last thing I want people to hear is the NFL, shame on you. How dare you pretend to help us? How dare you pretend to care? As a credentialed sports writer for the NFL, I know for a fact that you haven't done anything for us. There's not one place in New York City that you have funded for us to have housing. There's nothing that you've done. So shame on you. Pull my credential if you need to. But I cannot be silent anymore while the NFL pretends to care about domestic violence victims, because they don't. And if there's one thing I want you to hear, is organizations are just holding these charity functions for the fun, just for the fun of it, just so they get dressed up in a black tie. We're not getting the money. It's domestic violence fraud.
Domestic violence fraud. Ain't no half stepping with Marcus J. Live from the den of Legacy Internet Radio. Thank you for coming to the show today. Thank you for sharing your story. Your courageous fight for your child is inspiring. Your fight to help others who are facing similar plights is inspiring, and hopefully there's someone who is listening to our show right now who is inspired to help you. So definitely make sure you go to the GoFundMe account, Josee's mom. Call Chanel Garcia, call Mayor de Blasio, fax the White House, because what we're hearing here is absolutely outrageous and egregious, and I think there needs to be something done, because I agree, obviously we need to bring Josee home. Ain't no half stepping on Marcus J. Live from the den. Hold the line for me for just a moment. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we've got more. Ain't no half stepping on Marcus J. Live from the den, Legacy Internet Radio.